All right, let's dive right into this. Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're mapping out what has to be one of the most fascinating chain reactions happening in the tech ecosystem right now. I mean, if you've been following the industry, you already know things move incredibly fast, but the events of just the past 10 days, they've exposed this deeply interconnected web. It literally ties the everyday tools sitting on a software developer's laptop directly to the single largest financial event in market history. We're going to break down exactly how a simple shift in software billing sparked a massive price war, how that exact war is now threatening the foundation of a trillion-dollar infrastructure, and, well, we'll also look at a new experimental technology that's basically offering developers an escape hatch. So, pose this question to yourself for a second. What exactly does a $750 software bill have to do with the largest IPO in history? It's kind of wild to think about, right? The sheer scale of that disconnect is just staggering. On one hand, you have this $750 monthly invoice for a single coder. On the other hand, a $1.78 trillion initial public offering. They sound like completely separate universes, microeconomics versus massive macroeconomics. But as you're about to see, the bridge between these two numbers is built entirely out of compute power, token economics, and honestly, a little bit of market panic.
Let's trace these dominoes back to the start. The very first one that tipped over and set this whole thing off was the Copilot sticker shock. Okay, so picture this. On June 1st, Microsoft and GitHub fundamentally changed the rules of the game. For the longest time, the expectation was super simple. You pay a flat rate, maybe $10 for the Pro plan or $39 for Pro Plus, and your costs are totally capped. You can just code all day and night, no worries. But then this new token-based reality hit. Instead of a simple, predictable subscription, heavy workflows started consuming GitHub AI credits based on actual, literal token usage. Almost immediately, we started seeing reports of monthly costs just exploding from that expected $29 all the way up to $750. And in some really heavy agentic workflows, bills rocketed from $50 to a staggering $3,000. It was pure, unadulterated sticker shock. Technically, the base plan prices didn't change, but this token-heavy reality, it completely broke the budget of the everyday developer. To put that into perspective and really understand why this was so terrifying for a developer on a budget, just look at this one specific case. We had a developer sitting on the premium $39 Copilot Pro Plus plan, and they reported burning through 8% of their entire monthly AI credit allotment in just 2 hours. Just do the math on that for a second. At that burn rate, their entire monthly quota would completely evaporate in under 2 days. This wasn't just some theoretical pricing update you read about in a press release, it was a real-world workflow crisis. And you better believe the rest of the AI industry was watching this outrage very, very closely. Which brings us to this incredibly frantic timeline. So June 1st, the Copilot switch hits, and the outrage immediately begins. Now, GitHub did try to soften the blow. They offer temporary promotional credits, like an extra $30 a month for business and $70 for enterprise through August 2026. But honestly, the blood was already in the water. Exactly 8 days later, on June 9th, competitors were scrambling to capitalize on this developer anger. Both Anthropic and Google made massive strategic moves on the exact same day. And then literally a day after that, on June 10th, leaks emerged about OpenAI's counter strategy. The window of opportunity here was tiny, and everybody rushed the door at once.
It's fascinating to look at how these battle lines were drawn, because you'll notice completely divergent strategies. Anthropic? They went premium. They launched Fable 5 at $10 to $50 per million tokens, which is double the price of their previous Opus model. And they offered a very brief free preview window with absolutely no budget tier whatsoever. But Google sensed the vulnerability and went super aggressive on price. They slashed their AI Plus monthly cost from $7.99 down to $4.99, and they actually doubled the included storage to 400 gigabytes. Meanwhile, reports started leaking that OpenAI is preparing these drastic token price cuts specifically designed to win over Anthropic customers. So, boom, a full-blown price war erupted in less than 48 hours. Now, you might be wondering, why the sudden panic? Well, there is an unspoken truth inside those boardrooms. Google and OpenAI aren't just fighting each other. They are desperately trying to stop a bleeding of users to the east. Just look at the global developer API traffic breakdown over on OpenRouter. A massive 61% of that traffic is already flowing to cheaper Chinese models like DeepSeek and QN. Because think about it. When an American developer's Copilot bill suddenly jumps to $750 and a Chinese alternative can do the exact same job for $20, brand loyalty vanishes instantly. The West didn't start this price war. They're actually just reacting to a reality that Chinese labs created months ago.
But here's the thing, this price war isn't happening in a vacuum. And that brings us to the next major piece of this giant puzzle, the SpaceX compute connection.
Let's zoom out for a second from those micro-level developer bills to a massive macro-level shockwave. Let this number sink in for a moment. $1.78 trillion. That is the staggering market capitalization of SpaceX as it prices the single largest initial public offering in history. We're talking about a $75 billion fundraise at a fixed price of $135 a share. I mean, that more than doubles the previous record set by Saudi Aramco. It is a colossal financial event. But if you dig into the S-1 filing for this space company, buried inside is a massive, incredibly telling footprint of artificial intelligence infrastructure.
Because building the future comes with an astronomical cost. According to their own disclosures, SpaceX's AI segment research and development costs have absolutely skyrocketed by over 300%. We are looking at a $5.06 billion R&D bill, and that includes $1.67 billion just in GPU depreciation. But honestly, the most mind-bending figure, they have over $25.45 billion in contractual commitments for cloud capacity, and that's heavily concentrated in just the next couple of years. The sheer scale of compute required to run this empire is just staggering.
And right here is where the big twist comes in. Take a look at the revenue anchors that are actively supporting xAI's massive Colossus data center, which, by the way, is deeply tied into this whole ecosystem. Do you know who holds the two biggest monthly compute contracts? It's Anthropic at $1.25 billion per month and Google at $920 million per month. Yeah, the very same companies that are out there aggressively cutting their API prices to fight off those cheaper Chinese models, they are the exact ones footing the bill for this massive compute infrastructure. If OpenAI and Anthropic crash the cost of tokens just to win back developers, the revenue thesis that underpins these massive compute contracts gets significantly softer. It is a highly, highly fragile house of cards. So, with all these titans battling it out, how do developers survive this volatile ecosystem without getting totally crushed in the crossfire? Well, enter Google's need for speed.
Interestingly, Google, while they're busy fighting this API price war on one front, just handed developers an incredible escape hatch on the other. They've clearly recognized this desperate need for fast, local coding assistance that isn't going to rack up a massive cloud bill. Let's break down exactly what they did. Google released a model called Diffusion Gemma. It's an experimental, open-source model released under a really permissive Apache 2.0 license. Now, what makes it revolutionary isn't its size. I mean, it's a 26 billion parameter model, sure, but it's a mixture of experts' architecture that only activates 3.8 billion parameters during inference. No, what makes it truly revolutionary is how it works. Instead of the standard autoregressive decoding, guessing one word at a time, it uses discrete text diffusion. This means it generates entire blocks of text simultaneously, entirely in parallel. And because it generates text in parallel, the velocity is absolutely off the charts. On a single NVIDIA H100, this thing blazes past 1,000 tokens per second. And even on a consumer-grade setup like an NVIDIA RTX 5090, it still hits over 700 tokens per second. Now, Google is being completely honest about the trade-off here. It definitely sacrifices top-tier benchmark quality for pure blistering speed. This model isn't meant to write a novel for you. It's built specifically for speed-critical workloads like real-time code infilling. And guys, this is the ultimate antidote to that very first domino we talked about today. When it's quantized, Diffusion Gemma fits neatly into just 18 gigabytes of VRAM. That means you can actually run it locally on a high-end consumer GPU. Developers can use this for real-time code infilling directly on their own machines, completely bypassing the cloud entirely. No more $750 monthly GitHub AI credit bills. It's basically a way to reclaim control over your own workflow and your wallet, while the tech giants are off battling it out in the cloud. Which leaves us with this final, truly vital question to ponder. We've seen how developer sticker shock triggered an all-out API price war. We've seen how developers are actively fleeing to cheap Chinese models or turning to fast local models like Diffusion Gemma just to avoid those crazy costs. But as the cost of AI tokens races toward the bottom, who is going to pay the $25 billion in cloud commitments that companies like SpaceX and xAI are banking on? If everyday developers stop paying premium prices for the cloud, the ripple effect is going to hit the very data centers that are building the future. It's a trillion-dollar game of dominoes, and honestly, we are just watching the first pieces fall. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Definitely keep your eyes on the data, because this story is far, far from over.